born into your religion?
My dad was a Christian, yeah.
Yes.
He was an atheist for years as well, though.
Yeah.
But
you guys, you're right. Right?
What's that?
You guys are right.
Here's the thing. It's a question.
72 virgins don't exist.
It's a question of epistemology. You know what epistemology means?
Yeah. Do you know what, like, you know,
So the thing is, from an atheistic or agnostic perspective, the problem is how we know anything at all. So if we're talking about knowledge, and we're talking about truth, and we're talking about morality, we need to figure out how we can know anything. How do we trust our senses? How do we make sense of the world? So I would ask you, on what basis can you say that anything is true at all?
Through science, honestly.
Okay. So observation, then.
And polytheistic gods, and other gods that exist well before Catholicism and Christianity.
I'm not a Catholic.
Same thing.
Well, it's not the same thing, but the thing is, you're saying that...
No. You got, like, literally with the old Christianity. Was taking over another religion. Religions existed before that. You know, a lot of polytheistic views. I mean, you go back to the Greeks, like the Native Americans.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the Christians got it right.
Right.
But there's absolutely no proof of it.
Okay. That's the thing. You're asking for proof. You're talking about science and observation.
Yeah.
And when we talk about truth, the definition I assume you would use is truth is that which comports with reality. So truth is that which matches reality. So the question is, how do we know reality? Is it through our senses?
I guess I'd rather live my life through knowing. I don't want to devote my life to something that I'd rather. You don't know if you're right or wrong. And if you're wrong, man, you've wasted a lot of time. Because, you know, have you read the Quran? I've got the Quran and the Bible. And they're both really, really, really similar books. And they're both really branched off Judaism. I mean, you guys, if there is any religion, it's Judaism. Jewish people got it right.
I would say the Christian perspective is that it's the fulfillment of the old law. The purpose of the Old Testament law was to show man that they're in desperate need of a Savior. And that's what Christ came to do. He came to help us in our sin because we can't make it on our own. But being right or wrong, that's a good question. That's a good observation. And I would say we can't know whether we're right or wrong unless we have a basis to stand on to objectively look at the world and say this is right and this is wrong. Because if it's a possibility, for example, if it's a possibility that you have faulty reasoning, could you know that you have faulty reasoning?
No.
No.
Say, do you know who Neil deGrasse Tyson is?
Yeah.
He just released a 2-hour video. They did a big convention with all, bigwigs.
Yeah.
And he's kind of convinced that we're involved in a matrix. Take this in. Now, if you were to try to prove that the matrix existed, there would be no coherent evidence because the evidence could always be a simulation.
Okay.
Makes sense, right? A lot of what you're saying, you can always...
Brain of that type thing. Yeah.
Now, when you look out to the stars, and you got to know a little bit about the galaxies, and we're the only ones, or is it possibility that this God controls all of these universes?
I would say that God controls everything, whatever exists. But with that example, that's a really good point. And David Hume and Bertrand Russell recognized the same thing. Evidence by itself doesn't make any sense. We can't actually know anything to be true, according to these guys, since they use their reasoning to see that
anything that's real is like things I can see and touch. That's my opinion.
That's the thing too, because even our sight, we're assuming something about our sight, our vision, our senses, that we can justify our senses by our senses, and that's circular reasoning.
There's so much we can't see.
Yeah.
Like there are multiple dimensions that doesn't correlate with Christianity views at all. I mean, that's going in the opposite direction. That's the thing.
It directly addresses the epistemology of someone who denies God, because if we don't have God, if we don't
deny God, you can't deny something that doesn't exist.
Well, it's your presupposition that God doesn't exist. But the thing is, in order to be able to deny God, you have to come up with an epistemology that makes sense. And with what Neil deGrasse Tyson was saying, evidence doesn't make sense. So in order to prove Christianity wrong, you would need evidence, and if evidence doesn't make sense, you can't prove it wrong.
I can prove it wrong. The fact that you can't prove it wrong.
Not according to what you were just saying.
Yes and no. You're correct. You are correct on that. I can't prove it wrong though because I can't prove it's right. You can't prove something doesn't exist if there's no proof that it does exist.
Okay, so the question is then that if we can prove anything, is whether we can prove anything wrong or right at all. And so to say that God doesn't exist...
I would like... I wouldn't question because this isn't one of those debates, but if I want to do something stupid like punch somebody, that's wrong and right.
Yeah.
I can make that difference for myself, you know?
Yeah, I can definitely say that would be wrong because what you're doing there is you're interfering with an image bearer of God. You're doing something that's wrong to an image bearer of God. And so you're not acting in the character that God designed for us. But with your worldview, though, we're just a randomly assembled bag of protoplasm that's bumping into another randomly assembled bag of protoplasm. It doesn't really make sense that it's bad because it's just matter bumping into matter under these conditions. Yeah. So the problem is we want to say that's wrong, we want to say that's true, that's false, we want to say all these things, and when we do that we're displaying that we're made in the image of God. But your worldview militates against that, and it says that we're not made in that image. It says that we're not made in the way that God made us. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I mean, you just beat around the bush, and you use big words.
I'm not trying to. If I am, I'm sorry, but what you're saying though is that our being is just matter in motion, and you're saying things are wrong though. That doesn't make sense if we're just matter in motion.
No, it completely does.
How does it make sense? Because if I were to take this stick, right, and break it, still breaking something. If I were to take your arm and break it, one of those we both know would be wrong, right? But it's still just matter in motion. It's just a different type of matter. Why is that wrong?
The thing about that is I can do that without the need of God to tell me to do what's right and wrong, and I can make that for myself.
That's what I'm asking.
That's how I know that there is no God, because I know what is right and wrong. And the fact that you have to have a God to justify your decisions is really sad for the human race.
But that's what I'm saying.
No, that is what I'm saying. It's sad for the human race that you need this entity, this...
I'm not saying that you don't know right
from wrong. Oh, I know I do.
I know, that's what I'm saying about you. I'm saying you do know it, but your worldview doesn't match that view. Your worldview militates against that view because you're
My worldview tells me that Muslims and all of that is extremely wrong. And I'm extremely...
What is wrong in your worldview then?
In my worldview?
Yeah.
I think everybody needs to get rid of religion because it's the only thing that's ever caused any kind of conflict throughout history.
Okay.
Like if you literally could get rid of this idiot... Right. I've got one more point because I've really got to go. Maybe... I'd look you up on Facebook or something because I'm honestly an open mind guy. I came up here.
You seem like I'm glad you talked.
Fight, come up and educate myself, and I'll do some of your stuff. But have you ever stumbled across the book that the Catholic Church is holding? It is actually the third testament that says that Jesus